my book. It was right around COVID time. I was sitting on my porch. I said, this is a time to put all of the institutional knowledge that I've gathered, all this mush in my head from 26 years having served in government. I come from a very unique perspective because I'm a rare breed that has been both a Democrat and a Republican who has served in the state level and on the county level and has been a legislator and an executive. So there's a lot of stuff up here, and instead of always, as Colleen will tell you, throwing my shoe at the TV, mad at something, I said, let me put it down on paper and give my perspective as to how we can make a better America. So what I did is I took a lot of my writings that have been published in the Washington Examiner, Newsmax, the New York Post, the Albany Times, Union, Newsday, and I made a compilation of them and divided them into 15 different chapters. Lucky for you, I'll only talk about 2 tonight. But they range from income inequality to college cost, to healthcare cost, how we deal with China, the illegal immigration problem, the Supreme Court, the state of education, and I just put in my 2 cents as to what we can do to make things better. Now, I'm a believer that we have the answers. To know the answers, you first have to know the root of the problem, okay? I think I know that. I have the answers, I believe, and other people think they have their answers. The problem has always been the will to implement those answers, because what you have from both parties is their first inclination is to preserve power rather than implementing common sense. So I don't take my perspective from what's good for my team. Is it right or left? Is it Democrat or Republican? It's what makes common sense based upon what I've learned over the years in government. So I'm going to talk about 2 topics, just one right now, and then I'll hand it over to Shayna. I'm going to talk to you about the state of education in America. Okay. It is, quite unfortunate that at one time we were leaders in the world with pushing out students who were at the top of the top. And now we are literally in the middle of the pack of industrialized nations when it comes to the performance of our students. And it's quite sad because, while China and Singapore and Taiwan and Japan are cranking out these math whizzes, we are having a steady decline in our student performance. And you have to ask why. The main thing I talk about in my book is stop thinking that spending more money on this problem is going to solve it. It's like Einstein's statement that, or definition of insanity, it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They have doubled and tripled the amount of money to education from the state over the last few decades. In fact, between 2002 and 2020, we went from spending $18,000 per student to now a nation-high $31,000 per student in New York. It's $36,000 in New York City. So actually in the last 12 years, the amount of aid to education has tripled the rate of inflation. Now, what do you have to show for that? Nothing. The scores have actually come down again. If you look at Newsday tomorrow, it came online today, it'll be in the paper tomorrow, they show that less than half of our New York State students are proficient in math or English. Now, why is that? It's not money. If I asked you, and I'm going to prove what the problem is, if I asked you what ethnic group usually does the best on these exams, you know the answer. It's Asians, right? Then who's second? It's whites. Third is Hispanic, and African American is below that. Now, people will say, why is that? One theory, which I do not espouse to, and I will prove this is incorrect, is that one ethnic group is inherently more intelligent than the next, okay? Another theory is it's a matter of past discrimination. Okay? Well, Asians were discriminated against too, yet they're succeeding. Then they'll say, well, maybe it's a lack of funding or a lack of family income. Well, a lot of these first generation Asians were very poor, but they were still excelling, okay? So what is the answer? The answer is culture. Culture. And a lot of people wince at that and say, well, but it's actually a good thing because culture can be changed, okay? And I'm going to prove to you that it's not the intelligence, because there was a study that was done, and if you look at who's doing the best on these tests, first generation Asians are far and away number one. Better than whites, better than Hispanics, better than African Americans on the exams. Then you get to the second generation, and they're still at the top. A little less so, but still above whites, Hispanics, African Americans. Something very interesting happens, but a third generation. The gap between Asians and whites dissipates. It is no more. Now, is that because their DNA changed over 3 generations? No, they became Americanized, okay? The kids started playing sports. They started going to the movies. They started hanging out. You know, that discipline, that sacrifice now for later culture was starting to dissipate and become more Americanized. You have to read this book called The Tiger Mom by Amy Chapp. And she talks about this, how ferocious the Asian culture is in getting those kids to study. They did an analysis, a survey of moms, and asked, do you think it's important to inject fun? It's important to have fun into the academic process. And 70% of white moms said, yes, absolutely, it's very important. Guess what the percentage was for Asian moms? Zero. Literally zero. And this isn't about fun. This is about learning. And that's the difference. So what have we been doing in America to deal with these lower scores? Instead of raising the kids up and expecting more from them, more discipline in our schools, you have to do better or we don't socially promote you, they're lowering the standards. They're lowering the grade passing. So it was 65, now it's 50. Oh, look, we're passing all of our kids. It's absolutely ludicrous, okay? The regents now. You don't have to take the regents anymore. You can take the regents. If you like the score, you keep it. And if you don't, you throw it out. Great incentives there, right? It's absolutely nuts. So there is a way to change this. It's not money. So when all of these groups come to you and say, we want more money to make things better, tell them no way, enough of that. A perfect example as well, then I'll hand it over to Shayna. If you look at 2 school districts on Long Island, Garden City and Hempstead. You think Garden City, you think of these beautiful big houses and the green lawns and the high income parents, mostly true. You think of Hempstead, lower income. So you think, why are the Garden City kids scoring higher than the Hempstead kids? It's gotta be money, right? Well, no. Because the cost per student spent in Hempstead exceeds Garden City. The money from the state is $5 million a year for Garden City. It's $127 million for Hempstead. So money's got nothing to do with it. I'm not saying no money, you need some money to have the basics, right? But it's about culture. It's about demanding more from our children. And what's the proof of that? Charter schools. Charter schools. They work. The performance of students, black students in charter schools, is like 19% higher on English and about 30% higher on math. Same with Hispanics. That's why so many minority parents want their children in the charters. But here in New York, they stop it because of the powerful teachers unions. I think that's a crime. These kids have a right They get out of failing, violent schools, and that's what we talk about here. And by the way, a lot of people might say, oh, we gotta be careful because if you cherry pick and you take those kids and you put them into the charter, the present public school will come down. No. The studies show that when you put a charter school into an area where there was a public school monopoly, you know what happens to the public school? It goes up in performance. Why? Because now there's competition. It's not a monopoly anymore. And they're doing this in other states around the country, but not New York. They do it a little, but they cap it here. Florida is the perfect example. Florida had some of the worst schools in America just a decade or two ago. They implemented charter schools and competitions. They're among the best schools in the nation right now. So we can make a difference. We're talking about a lawsuit to go in and say, you know, it is simply a violation of the equal protection for these young students, especially in these failing schools, to tell the moms that you must relegate your child to a violent failing school. They should have the right to go elsewhere. I'm not saying you should take a kid from Sable and put him in some other public school, but if there's a charter school available, let them go in and let them say whoever wants to come here can come here. And you'll see how fast the regular public schools will have to shore up because now there's competition. So these are the kind of things I talk about in my book. A lot of people don't think about. They hear that those same worn-out lines, oh, they're underfunded, and it's a matter of racism, blah, blah, blah. No, it's a matter of culture, and it's a matter of making our children exceed our expectations, not lowering expectations. All right, that's my chapter 1. On that note, I'm handing it over to the lovely Shayna.
Thank you, Steve. I don't know how I'm going to follow up with that. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. So I think it's important, like Steve and I are both old school, and you can see that he can see the changes that have happened over the past few decades, as have I. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Shayna Melissa Stockman. I've been a registered nurse now over 30 years, a nationally board certified nurse practitioner, a #1 international best-selling author of this book, and I'm now known as the Autoimmune Expert and the World Wellness Expert. I think a lot has changed over the years, and I don't know why I'm nervous now. I just spoke in Nashville recently. There was about 7,000 of us, and I was less nervous. I don't know why. You know, my career began when my grandma raised me in the 1970s with the power of the plant and naturopathy. And you guys go, feel free to eat, don't bother me. My grandma raised me in the 1970s with the power of the plant, and I would watch her use plants for their medicinal purposes. Now, Steve talked about root causes, and we have to go back to that. Because when my grandma raised me, I would watch her use the power of the plant for medicinal purposes and not need medicines for her heart, to control her arrhythmias, irregular beats, and other things. I'd watch her salt, not need a blood pressure pill. I'd watch, and this is going back over decades. I'm talking in the 70s. I watched my grandmother, all of her siblings, brothers and sisters, had diabetes. And she decided just because you have a gene for a disorder like diabetes or cancer does not mean that gene is going to be expressed. So I learned not from what she told me, but observing her. And I would watch her, watch what she eat, watch the processed food, stay skinny, and never develop that gene for diabetes. So although we can't change our genes, we can change if they're expressed. And I think we're both old school, the way he's talking and the way I'm talking. And the power of the plant, naturopathy was pretty much wiped out by Rockefeller, and I don't want to get into all that. But I went into nursing to help people get better and not keep them sick. And I think, honestly, if we're going to talk about how society's changed the past 3 decades, because I didn't know what I was going to say till I got up here and I heard Steve's talk. But after seeing how he said that we've changed over the past few decades, we used to look at the power of the plant for medicinal purposes. We didn't use medicine. My grandma would eat a banana every day for her potassium, her magnesium, so she wouldn't need a blood pressure pill. Sometimes we need to go back to old school, and Steve talked about root causes, like why Hempstead might have excruciating higher expenditure on education, but yet their grades are poorer. So we have to go back to the root causes of things. And that's what we're not doing. And I think, I went into medicine and nursing to help people get better, and it kind of changed, to be honest with you. And I went into nursing. A nurse impacted my life. I love science, I love math. I met a nurse and I said, wait, she likes helping people. I like helping people. She'll never realize how many lives she impacted, and they impacted more. However, being in the medical field for so many years, it's not what I signed up for anymore, to be honest. I went into medicine to help people get better, not keep them sick. But if we're looking at how things changed over the past several decades, it seems like the society is keeping them sick for recurring visits and dependent upon medications to keep them back every month. And it's not, I didn't sign up for the sick care system. I want to get my people better. I get my clients better. And they're like, when do you want to see me again? I'm like, when you need a Shayna tweak. So we have to go back to our roots and find out the root causes of our problems. And a lot of times, medicine's not usually the answer, It's, if we get to the root cause, we can usually stop the progression of the disorder and even reverse it, and the symptoms go away. And then when the symptoms go away, there's usually not need for medicine to treat symptoms that are no longer there. And then without the medicine, we don't have the side effects, the interactions, and lethal overdoses. And I'm sorry, I didn't know where I was going with this until you talked about root causes and how things changed over the decades. But if you guys realize, prescription drugs is one of the root causes, the leading causes of death in the US right now. And yet we're so easy to give a script, and I'll have a patient come in and say, hey doc, give me that shot for the poison ivy, the steroid. And I'm like, wait, you want a shot of steroids and hormones injected deep into your vein for like a little rash? So sometimes we need to just get back to the root causes of things. And I don't want to keep you guys from eating. You're more than welcome to get up and eat. I think I got a few more minutes here. And I wanted to say that if we get to the root causes, it seems like a lot of times the sick care system wants to keep them sick for recurring visits. And a lot of times now, it's sad but true, not all the doctors, but a lot of them are choosing their wallet over the wellness of the patient. And I can personally tell you 2 instances this past year where a surgeon wanted to take out organs of mine that didn't need to be taken out, okay? Tell me that wasn't for greed. So, be your own advocate with your health. Do your research. If you're not getting better and the doctor is like, hey, listen, your tests are fine, that means he might not have ordered the right test. And sometimes it takes years later for the test to show if they have to order the right test, wait for it to be bad enough. And I know so many patients getting gaslit by doctors for years. And the doctors are telling them, listen, your tests are normal, you're just getting older, especially if you're a woman out there. And just to leave you on this, autoimmune, because I only used 5 of my 10 minutes, I'm keeping track here. Autoimmune disorders is one of the top 10 leading causes of death in young to middle-aged women. There's over 100 of them, and I'm just gonna share you my personal story because you might have some of these symptoms or know of people that have them, and they usually don't even know they're autoimmune related. So most patients I see with autoimmune that come to me, they've been to several doctors. They have had several tests, the workup for A to Z, and the doctors don't know what's wrong with them. Try this, try that, let's up the dose. Oh, you're getting a side effect from that med? Let's give you another med for the side effect of the other med. You're not feeling better? Okay, we're gonna add this other med on board. And it seems like a vicious cycle of repeat, another med, add a dose, higher dose, side effect, add another med. And that's not what it's about. Autoimmune, let me tell you some of the symptoms I had, because you guys might have them and it might help someone you know. I don't know if some of you guys want to participate, but how many of you have like hair thinning, right? Or inability to lose weight even though you're watching what you eat? Or you're exhausted even though you're sleeping? Or you're in more pain than you should be? These are just some of the signs and symptoms of it. Or your doc says your blood sugar's a little high, your blood pressure's a little high, you have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, autoimmune. You have IBS, celiac, gluten intolerance, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, they're all autoimmune. Hypersensitive reactions, asthma, allergies, eczema. Your doctors might not be telling you they're autoimmune, so they can't treat it correctly. They're not realizing that. So you have to be your own advocate. I was diagnosed with most of those. I was diagnosed with hair thinning, weight gain, even though I was watching what I eat, exhaustion, even though I slept, pain out of proportion. Doctors might look at you like you're drug seeking or just go to give you a narcotic to get you coming back every month. And it'll give you false reassurance your tests are okay. But there's a lot more to it. I had the Hashimoto's, I had weird rashes come and go, things that don't run in my family, asthma, eczema. I was diagnosed with IBS, MS, and heart failure. And I'm like, wait a second, after 30 years being in the healthcare field and seeing patients with autoimmune, no matter which disorder, which doctor, which med, their jobs of those meds was to weaken their immune system. So now their immune system's weaker. They're sick more often. They're sick with more symptoms and more severe symptoms. And I knew when I had my autoimmune disorders, I did not want that. I'm like, I have to do something different to get a different result. And fast forward now, just, my hair's coming in thicker, I'm back to my ideal weight, my sugar's normal, my blood pressure's normal, I have great energy, I'm no more pain, and I take no prescriptions, and I'm not in heart failure anywhere, and all my tests are great, and I haven't had a flare-up of MS in years. And some of my former doctors are my clients now, and there's some that turn a blind eye because they don't want to know, because you know what? I'm not coming in for pain pills every month. And it's sad, but that's the reality of it, because thank you, Steve, for enlightening us on realities, and I just wanted to share that with you guys, that there's a big reality of it, and I'm like 8.5 minutes, so I don't want to keep you guys. So I just want to share that with you guys, and now I want to bridge the gap. I left the sick care system. Now I help people get better and feel better when their doctors or their medicines didn't win or couldn't. And I want to bridge the gap for you, because maybe you can't relate to my story, but your neighbor, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother can. So I want to bridge the gap. I don't want to teach you everything, just introduce them to me. I have classes, courses, workshops coming up. And now I'm helping other healthcare providers, because the healthcare providers, they feel like if you have cancer, they send you to the oncologist. You need surgery, they send you to the surgeon. Well, you have an autoimmune problem, I'm the autoimmune expert. Like, they're coming to me now. So I want you guys to know that there's resources out there. I do virtual visits, live, workshops and other things. And I work with people one-on-one. I'm starting to do that a little less because there's too many people. So I do online classes, courses, and workshops. But I want to give them hope, because mindset's very important. And a lot of times you guys have been given up hope because you went to doctor after doctor after doctor, and they're trying to tell you it's in your head, and it's not. So I want to show you guys that there is hope, and you have to believe to achieve, and then take the action steps. And please reach out to me, connect me with those people you know, and go eat.
And I have part 2, and then Shayna can have another part 2, but let's take a 2-second break. Anybody wants to go over here? In fact, let's take a 5-minute break, get your food, and then I'll